Well, hello everyone, and welcome back to another PlateUp Learning the Basics food tutorial. Now, in this episode, we're going to be going over soups, or otherwise known as starters, sides, and desserts. And these are all generic. These are all the generic ones that you could get as you go through your run. They're not specific to a certain dish. These are the generic ones that you can get. Now, without further ado, you start off with carrot soup. Carrot soup, meat soup, and tomato soup, which we're going to get into in a second, all start the same way. You take a pot, you interact with a sink that provides water. So that is a regular sink or the starter sink. The dishwasher, the power sink, and the wash basin do not provide water. So you need to keep a sink around, even if you're washing dishes otherwise, to get the water. You then add a whole onion and you cook it, which makes the broth. The broth is the same for the meat soup, the carrot soup, and the tomato soup. It's the same broth. You then grab a carrot. Now you could chop the carrot or you could put a whole carrot in, it doesn't matter. Once the broth cycle is finished cooking, you add a carrot, it cooks again, and then it provides you with 3 servings of soup. Now 3 servings is not a lot, but when you make another batch of soup, you do not dump the pot. All you do is you add water to the onion that's in the pot that was already cooked. You cook it again, which goes a lot faster than the initial cook to make the broth. You then have more broth, and then you add your carrot, which again cooks faster than it did the initial time. That gives you 3 servings. A bit of a pain of a card to get early on because then you could be stuck with the entire run. If you have individual dining, every diner will request a starter. It's just how it works. If you have tables of 2 or more, you will get at least one that requires a soup, if that is your starter. Now, it doesn't mean that all 4 people will get it. No, it means at least one will have soup. I'm going to say soup and starter interchangeably because they're the same thing at this point in the game. Now, the next one is meat soup. You can't get meat soup without having carrot soup. It's the second card, or one of the 2 second cards in the soup tree. Now, it works the same way. Is you grab a pot, you get your onion, the water, you make your broth. The same way as the carrot soup, same amount of time, same everything. The only next thing you do is instead of grabbing a carrot from a carrot bin, you'll grab a whole steak from a steak refrigerator and you put it into the pot. It then makes the meat soup. Same as the carrot soup. 3 servings, same concept, same everything. If you run out of meat soup, you don't toss it. You keep the onion in the pot, you add more water, you cook it. You cook the broth portion, which cooks a lot faster than the initial one. You add your piece of steak, makes your meat soup. The next one is tomato soup. Now you need to have the other soup to get tomato soup. You can't start off with tomato soup without having carrot soup. Again, the broth is made the same exact way. Now I will say, with all the soups, is that you can cook the pot in any cooking device. It could be your starter hob, regular hob, safety hob, danger hob, oven, microwave, or the heated mixer, which I would not recommend at all because it literally would take 20 seconds or longer to cook it on a heated mixer. But you can. The danger hob and the oven are the fastest ways to cook it because they are at a 2x speed. But nonetheless, the tomato soup, the only difference with tomato soup is there's one extra step because you take a whole tomato and you put it in the pot, and then you also have to add tomato sauce, which all you do with that is you chop the tomato, you interact with it 2 times. The first time we'll chop the tomato, the second time we'll turn it into the sauce. So you could automate making the tomato sauce if you're going to be having a lot of tomato soup, for instance, which it's all random if you have the other soups anyway, but it is still one thing that you can automate as far as making the tomato sauce, even by taking a tomato and putting it into the mixer. Again, you cook it the same way. You make your broth, you put in the tomato sauce as well as a whole tomato. That then makes the bright red tomato soup, which still gives you 3 portions. To remake it again, you add the water to the onion, remake the broth without tossing the onion, that is. You add the tomato sauce and the whole tomato once again, and that will give you your tomato soup. Now, you have carrot, you have then meat, and then you have tomato. Those are the 3 starter options that you have for soups. Now we're on to sides. There are 4 common sides. You have broccoli. Broccoli is pretty straightforward when you think about it. You take a pot, You put water in, you put a whole head of broccoli in it, you cook it. You could leave it on the hob. You could, again, cook it with any sort of cooking appliance that you want. Danger hob and oven are the fastest because they are both at 2x speed. The regular hob is at 1x speed, and then the starter hob and the safety are at 0.75 speed. But again, with pots, as I've been saying through all the tutorials that I've been doing that hopefully you guys have been watching, is pots of anything will not burn no matter what you put, what cooking device you put them on. So for me, put it on the fastest thing possible because it does take a bit of time to cook the broccoli side. And to interact with it, here you actually have to interact with it with your interact button. You cannot just tap on it with a plate like you can for sauces and for beans because this is an actual side. You can withdraw the side without having a plate. You could use a freezer to freeze pots of broccoli. You could also use the splitter, which is now called a portioner, to portion out broccoli, and you could essentially portion it out and put it into a prep station if you really wanted to. Mostly you don't do that. You don't want to save stuff like that. And broccoli gives you 5 servings now. So it's a bit more than, say, soup, which is 3, but it does give you 5 servings. And again, it's a side. When the broccoli runs out, you have to get fresh water, fresh piece of broccoli, and you cook it again, as there is no broth or starter broth, so to speak, with broccoli. A pretty easy card. Just adds a bit of time in the beginning of the day to make it, and if you run out, you have to make more. But when you start out with anything that requires pots, you start with 3 pots. So theoretically, you could have 3 pots of broccoli already made, and there you go. The next one is going to be, I'm going to go skip to mashed potatoes, because mashed potatoes are similar to broccoli in the terms of you grab a pot, you add water, you add the potato, and you cook it. Now, cooking the potato takes a very, very long time. So I would suggest putting it on the fastest cooking appliance you have. If you have a regular hob versus a starter hob, use a regular hob. If you have a danger hob, by all means use a danger hob. If you have an oven, use the oven because it takes incredibly long to cook. And then the next thing you have to do is once it's cooked, you then have to interact with it, and essentially you're chopping the mashed potatoes, you're mashing the potato into the mashed potatoes. Now, the very best thing with mashed potatoes is it provides 20 portions. So if I would have a choice of any side to take, I would take mashed potatoes, especially if you have a freezer, because freezers will freeze whatever's inside it for the next day. So at the end of your day, if you have a fresh pot of mashed potatoes in it, the next day you likely don't have to make mashed potatoes, because unless you have over 20 customers, you're not going to be serving 20 orders of mashed potatoes. So it's a very good one to have. Minus 15%, just like the broccoli 15%, which isn't a lot, but if you have both of them, that's 30% reduction, which could be beneficial as you go up in levels, as you go up in days, as you go up in tiers. Now, we're going to go to chips. Chips are a one and done. You take the potato, you chop it, you then cook it on any sort of cooking device. Now, you could use a heated mixer for this because the mixer will do the chopping action as it's required to chop, and then it will also cook the fry. And because the fries or the chips are called fries, French fries in North America are called chips. In other parts of the world, here they're called chips in the game. We can either call it chips or fries. It doesn't matter. And you could fully automate chips by using a safety hob and a mixer and a couple conveyor belts or grabbers or a prep station. Very easy to make. They're a once and done, but having, say, something like a frozen prep station to put 4 portions of fries or chips at the end of the day would be beneficial when you start the day the next day. You don't have to worry about at least 4 customers with the side of chips. And the next one is going to be onion rings. Onion rings are very similar to French fries or the chips because they're a once and done. You cook them to order. You can't cook one and get multiple servings. It doesn't work that way. Onions are a bit different because you have one extra step, but it's a very simple step. Again, you chop your onion, which can be fully automated using mixers and grabbers. You then take the onions and you essentially dip it into the flour. You pick up the onion, you interact with it on the flour bin. Essentially, you could also pick up a flour in your hand and put it on top of the onion rings, which typically is easier just to use the onions in your hand. You tap it on the flour and you put it on a cooking device. Now, onion rings cook quickly like fries do or like chips do. So again, you could use it for the heated mixer, except you have to remember that in between the cutting phase and the cooking phase, you need to put flour on top of them, and then they'll cook just the same. Now, those are your 4 generic sides that you can get no matter what food dish you choose. You could get any one of those or all of them, mind you, in a run. Now we're on to desserts. There are a few desserts. I have my favorites, and I have some that are not my favorites. So black coffee, very, very simple. Basically, you pick up a cup, you place it back down. The interaction of placing it back down, it automatically will fill it. You pick it up again and you serve it. The cup is a disposable, just like the side. If you serve a side separately, it'll be on like its own little dish, but it's a disposable dish. It goes away. Same with the soup. The soup is served in a bowl, not on a plate. In the bowl is somewhat of a consumable or a disposable. When they're done the soup, the bowl just disappears. You don't have bowls to wash or little plates of sides to wash. But again, very easy to do coffee. Now, you can automate coffee. You could do a simple automation by having 2 coffee machines and a grabber in between, because the grabber will grab an empty cup and automatically put it into the machine, which automatically will make it fill. Now, there is a tutorial on automating coffee with 1 machine with 5 grabbers, or potentially 6 grabbers, depending on how many you want to actually use. But there is a tutorial on doing coffee. The tutorial is done by me. If you go to my channel, or if you go to YouTube and you type in coffee automation or PlateUp coffee automation, it will give you a link to my video on how to automate coffee. It's more of a later game thing, because most people, if you have a dessert or well, I guess you consider it a dessert, most people will get a dessert. And if you have 30 customers in one day, you don't want to be picking up and placing down 30 cups of coffee. You want to go over there, you want to grab one, and you want to serve it. And it automatically pulls an empty one, automatically fills it, and can automatically push it into a prep station if you have a prep station, or it could just be ready to go on top of the coffee machine itself, and you pick it up and one will automatically be made from that. Again, search me on YouTube for that. It'd be called Coffee Automation PlateUp or something like that. The next one is cheese boards. Actually, I'm going to skip to ice cream. Ice cream is one of my favorites because it's so simple. Again, it uses bowls that are disposable. You have vanilla, chocolate, strawberry. Some people say white, brown, or pink. If you use the accessibility option, it will have a C, a V, and an S on top of each kind to denote whether it's vanilla, chocolate, or strawberry. The way that you do ice cream is you use your interact button to choose which ice cream you want. It'll flip up each individual door. It'll flip up the vanilla. If you hit your interact button, again, it'll go to chocolate, to strawberry, and then back to vanilla again. If you hit your grab button or your pickup button, it'll pick up whatever it's there. If you pick up ice cream and it's the wrong one for your table, you have to dump it in the bin or set it aside, and hopefully someone else picks what you want. So you got to be careful. If you're playing a single player game, you can go as fast as you can hit the buttons to cycle through and pick up. You can go as fast as you want. If you're playing multiplayer and you are not the host, you have to slow down doing your ice cream to make sure each bin that you want is actually fully open before you choose it, because it's just the way that the lag is in the game. Whether you have the best connection or not, there still is a bit of a delay using ice cream. So if you try to go fast, you may end up choosing the wrong flavor, and then you have to bin it. And if you fill up your bin with ice cream, then you got to empty the bin. Or if you don't even have a bin, it's a pain in the butt because you can't wash you don't wash the ice cream bowls. They're disposable, just like the soup bowls or the coffee cup. So it's a very good one to have. It's very easy. They could choose from 1 to 3 scoops. You could have vanilla, a plain chocolate, strawberry, combination of 2, and you could have a combination of all 3. You could have a triple vanilla, triple chocolate. You could have 2 strawberry, 1 vanilla. You could have a trio of vanilla, chocolate, and strawberry. It just depends on whichever the customer orders. But again, very simple to do. But my biggest tip is don't go fast in multiplayer unless you're hosting, and if you're doing it solo play, don't go fast until you're confident enough that you can speed through the bins to get them quickly. Now again, there's no rush to do it, but if someone's waiting for their ice cream and their timer is ticking down, their patience, you want to go as fast as you can, it's very easy to make mistakes. Now the last one is a cheese board, which is not my favorite of the 3 sides because it involves a couple extra steps. Now, one positive thing with cheese boards, there's a couple positives, is it will serve up to 3 customers. So as long as you have anywhere between 1 to 3 customers at a table, if they all order a cheese board, you only need to make up 1. Now, if you have 4 customers or more at a table and they all order a cheese board, you have to supply 2 or more. If you have a table of 6, you could have 2. If you have a table of 7 or 8, then you have to supply with 3 cheese boards. So it scales up, but it's very easy. You only need 1 cheese board per 3 people who order it. If you have a table of 4 and 3 order a cheese board and 1 orders ice cream, you still only need 1 cheese board because it'll feed those 3, and then you have to supply the ice cream for the other person or the coffee or any combination of those. Now, cheese boards are fairly simple to make. You chop an apple, you grab a plate, which is actually the cheese board itself, which is not a consumable. You then tap it on the cheese, you tap it on the bag of nuts, and that is your cheese board. So it's sliced apple, cheese, and nuts. Now, the only issue with cheese boards is it's like a dirty plate, is it'll spawn back on whatever table has the number icon on top of it during your prep phase. And if you have something else on the table besides the cheese board will spawn in any available table spot, which could be bad. So you have to actually, when the customer leaves, you have to pick the cheese board up, and all you do is put it back on the stack. You don't have to wash it or bin it or anything like that. You put it back on the stack. So it adds a little bit more because it adds a stack of boards. It adds the apple bin, it adds the cheese wheel, and it also adds the bag of nuts. So that's 4 additional things, and you need to have a chopping surface like a counter, a workstation, or a mixer to chop the apple. Now, you don't need to chop the cheese or chop the nuts. You put them on just as they are. So it's not a bad card, but for 15%, I would either rather go with ice cream or coffee if I had a choice. But again, let's go back to the beginning, all soups, all sides, all desserts, all give you extra coins. It might only be 1 or 2, but it still gives you more coins than 0. And something like soup is a bit more difficult because it takes a bit more time. Your broccoli and your potatoes are a prep in the beginning of the day, but they serve multiple portions. Your chips and your fried onion rings, the chips can be automated fully. The onion rings can be automated fully if you have a combiner to access the flour, put the flour onto the rings. Then you get into coffee, can be automated fully. Ice cream, you cannot automate at all. There's no automation because you have to choose each individual bin type to pull out the ice cream. Because the orders can be so diverse, there really is no automation that would make any sort of sense with it. Because automation means automatic, and with ice cream, there's nothing automatic about it. It's the only dessert or the only dish where you actually have to choose from one bin what the flavors are going to be for the customer. But we'll go back to the beginning. Anyway, thank you guys so much. This is a bit of a lengthy video, but I wanted to put the soups, the sides, and desserts all in one video because they're common to get a soup or a starter. It's common to get a starter, a side, and get a dessert. Now, the one thing I will mention, if you have metal tables do not take sides. So even if a customer orders a side, you do not have to serve them. That does not hold true with soups or desserts. Soups and desserts are not sides. So whether you have a metal table or any other table, if they order a soup, you have to serve them a soup. If they order a dessert, you have to serve them a dessert. There are no ways around that. But thank you guys so much for watching. And stay tuned for another PlateUp Learning the Basics food card tutorial.